Hokkaido is one of the northernmost regions of Japan, known for its extremely cold temperatures and snowy winters. Our protagonist, Tsubasa, who lives in Tokyo and is not used to seeing empty streets or vehicles, decides to get out of the taxi before reaching his destination to take a walk and appreciate the scenery. However, he didn't consider how strong the cold would be, and he feels like his lungs are freezing as he walks towards the town to find his new house. Along the way, he encounters something that surprises him even more than the cold: a gal, a member of a Japanese urban tribe, fallen in the snow. Personally, I'm surprised that she's walking around with her legs exposed when there's 20 centimeters of snow on the ground. To understand why he's surprised, I should explain that in Japan, there are many different urban tribes that are distinguished by their peculiar ways of dressing, acting, and even speaking. One of these tribes is the Gals or Guaras, which you may have seen in many anime. They are often depicted with blonde or sometimes bronze hair. In real life, they tend to frequent Tokyo, particularly a certain area in Shibuya where there are stores with clothing brands characteristic of these girls. So, it's not very common to see them in other places, but with online stores, this is changing. Tsubasa approaches the gal to ask for directions to his destination, and she points him in the right direction with her finger. Then, she calls him back when she realizes the mistake he's about to make. It turns out that his house is in a nearby village, about a 3-hour walk away, making it an impossible mission to walk there in the snow. This is the moment when the protagonist regrets even more for getting out of the taxi. It makes me think that he got the worst taxi driver in all of Japan. It's clear that he still has a long way to go to reach his destination. For now, he just has to wait for about 5 minutes for the next bus that will take him to the village. So, on the bright side, he can at least chat with a beautiful girl his age while he waits. By the way, her name is Minami. She is quite surprised to learn that the protagonist comes from Tokyo, but she feels a little sorry for him, thinking that he will be very bored in such a desolate place. However, for him, it's not like that. In the big city, he felt overwhelmed and was often teased for being boring. He never knew what it was like to be popular. So, he prefers more relaxed and quiet places like this. The most interesting thing about all this is that they happen to be the same age and will attend the same high school. This immediately gives Minami confidence, and she becomes quite attached to Himas for the cold. Maybe it wouldn't be a problem if a certain person wore stockings and gloves, but everyone punishes themselves as they want. But after an unnecessary scene showing their runny noses in great detail, the portal offers him a handkerchief and for some reason he finds it quite nice, which distracts him a lot. She ends up putting some snow in his clothes to tease him, which obviously makes him laugh a lot and puts a fascinated expression on his face. By pure instinct, he almost blurts out that she is quite beautiful. They both feel a bit embarrassed about what just happened, but luckily the bus arrives just in time and she gets on while telling him her name. This creates a typical scene that unfortunately gets interrupted when Tasa realizes that he should have also gotten on the bus. At least the scene turned out great. We then jump directly to the first day of classes. His classmate introduces herself to everyone, but there doesn't seem to be anything remarkable or anyone who catches his attention, at least until Minami enters the room, arriving late as always. It's quite a coincidence that she happens to be the girl who sits next to him. Inside the classroom, where it's cold, there is a refrigerator and all the students usually use a blanket to warm their legs. This is something he didn't know, but he doesn't have to worry because Minami lends him one of hers since she always carries two due to being prone to getting sick. I was going to say that the protagonist is a bit strange because he can imagine things based on the smell and warmth of the blanket, but I think Minami is even stranger because when Tsubasa returns it to her, she directly smells it and tells him that their scents have combined. She is more open and trusting than the average Japanese person, so she doesn't hesitate to ask the protagonist to accompany her on the way to the station while holding his arm. Well, it should also be mentioned that she does it to tease him a bit and because she's curious if he has a girlfriend and where couples usually go on a date in Tokyo. In this place, it's always cold, so the equivalent of a date is usually walking home together or going to each other's houses. Basically, that's what she proposes for the next day since they both have the day off. She wants to ask him about Tokyo, and she doesn't think there's anything wrong with taking him to her house because it's not only done in a romantic context, but friends often visit each other a lot in this area. He has no choice but to accept because she is quite insistent. It's true that the next day he feels like turning back the closer he gets to her house. But the temptation to pay her a visit is quite strong for him because he has never visited a girl's house before. The worst part is that his nerves grow even more once he enters the house because she tells him that he's lucky her parents aren't there. And the way she said it, plus her expression, makes it clear that her mind is elsewhere. First, she makes him sit in the living room to show him what a radiant floor is, which is basically a floor with a radiator, something he had no idea existed. Well, I just mentioned it because of these little curiosities, but putting them aside, Minami starts with her usual playful teasing towards the protagonist. Then she offers him a drink and pours some for herself, but it seems like her hand is shaking a lot because she spills it all over herself, so she has to change clothes. The problem is that this new outfit has a much greater impact than the previous one, and even without the need to tease the protagonist, he already feels very nervous. That's why he decides to take out a movie he hasn't seen as an excuse to not look at her too much. Although the movie has a scene that can't be monetized, the embarrassment isn't too high because she falls asleep because she found it boring. This is like a blow to him, considering that he has a complex thinking that he is a boring person. So he decides to watch the movie on his own and wait for her to wake up before leaving. Minami is surprised to see that he covered her with his coat and doesn't really understand what's happening because she's half asleep. What she does notice is that Tsubasa is acting colder as soon as he leaves the room. Realizing that it was very rude of her to fall asleep when she was the one who invited him, she goes to look for him to apologize without thinking that she doesn't have anything to keep her warm. The protagonist notices this and the first thing he does is put his scarf on her because he is worried. But the cold hits him a little harder. She takes advantage of this to hold his hand and take him to eat something hot,